We're very grateful to our hosts, IHR, for letting us do this. Thank you very much. We're hoping that in the real world, the real sofa will be there on stage somewhere, and there'll be some real alcohol. 4 o'clock feels a little bit early for me, even for me, and I'm an alcoholic. Oh, that's not true. I drink a lot, and it feels a little bit early. Although not for Jim. See, I'd swear you drink. The plan really is to bring in some of the people that we've met throughout our journey, I think people describe it. First and foremost, if they're here, we're going to bring in Natasha and we're going to bring in Mark. I can only see you, Natasha, so you're going to have to come in your own. I'm also optimistic that we'll also bring in, well, Steve's going to come along as well, because I said he would. And there'll be some other people that we've met. There's always a few names to recognise, which is good news. And really just get a feel for the day, what was good, what was bad, what was indifferent. I get to be abusive towards Jim in the nicest possible way, if anybody's watching, because of course I love him like no other.
That is true. I can vouch for that.
I wouldn't call it love, Martin, but there we go. I think there's a fondness there.
I love you like no other. I don't love you like I love anybody else, and that makes you special.
I learned in Ireland that if we're not teasing you, then we don't like you. So you know that.
Oh, it's the same rule. I said that to my kids. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Your was it a VP of marketing has been busy this afternoon?
Yes, well, she has. Yeah, so I introduced Jim again to my 6-year-old this morning, who sadly is at home because one of her little friends has been positively diagnosed. So anybody who are parents, you'll realise what a pain in the backside. We lasted a whole week of the kids being at school until now one of them's back again. And the good news is it's this one. She's the good one. But the next one up has sort of come home going, one of my friends hasn't been in for 3 days now. I thought, oh, really? I'm sure it'll be fine.
Did you say the good one or the favourite one? You're not got favourites already or that kind of thing. So this is recorded once.
Natasha, what have you come into?
I have 2 boys and a girl. She's my favourite.
This is already danger zone.
I was going to say on a night out I had with my dad a few weeks ago, we had a few too many drinks, and he turned around and said to me and my sister that we're definitely the favourite children, and my brother's on the out. So yeah, I'm happy being the favourite child.
I think I probably have said it to them all. Yeah, why not? It's important. They need to learn. I mean, Jim's heard me swearing at them, shouting at them, and abusing them, and having the money talk. Because the one I think you made the best thing, where I sort of screamed at them just to my kids, "Shut up! If this call was worth money, you'd be dead." Just a little casual joke.
Hey, ask me anything. All right.
How are you, Natasha? You've had a busy day. You've been been running the workshops. This is your time to sort of sit back and relax, and Jim will entertain us. So how are you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I bought my glass of wine, and then I got a little bit worried that I wasn't going to be able to drink it.
Oh no, you can. Oh no, you're fine with that.
That was my condition, wasn't it?
So I'm sorry that there are no red Skittles. I'm really sorry, because that was the other deal. Was it a little bottle of red Skittles, a pint of wine, and a Dorito or something? I think.
Yeah, I'll let you off. I've got my breadsticks as well, so that's all fine. No, do you know what? It has been a really busy day. We started off with any true virtual event with a few technical issues, so apologies to everyone from that side. I think main stage and your stages were all okay, but there was a few sort of speaking issues, sort of technicalities and bits and pieces. So it's then just trying to coordinate that whilst trying to run the workshops, then talking to some of the partners, emailing back, and then doing the day-to-day as well. So it's been good, and I hope that everyone has enjoyed it. I'm interested to hear more on what happened on the main stage and some of the other stages as well, to be honest.
Nothing happened. It was we just started this morning. Did you do anything today, Martin? I don't. Did we not supposed to just turn it off and that was it? Just go ahead.
Nobody else will understand. Everybody turned up, which is good. So
that's always a bonus.
Obviously, it was good. I think. I mean, I scribbled some notes. So the grown-up bit of me wanted to see what I'd learned. There's a definite. I guess feedback was that it was good in the fact that it was live. That some events, the pre-record is fine and we get information and we sort of consume it. But the ability to ask a question is a really important factor, I think, when people talk about something. And actually, I think for me, and obviously being lovely to all of the people that have spoken today, I think it worked for them as well, because they did know, whilst they couldn't see the audience, at least they knew there was an audience there. And at some point, somebody's going to put their hand up and say, actually, you've just said this. What do you think? Do you actually think this? And I think that really worked very, very well. Some common themes, I guess, as well. You know, 2020 has been a year like no other. We're all buggered in different ways and whatever else it's going to be. And I guess there was that navel gazing. What does, we've been optimistic. What does next year look like? Some people are very optimistic, and I love you for that, because I'm not one of you. So that's great.
Was that some of the stuff that was coming out from the speakers or from the attendees as well? I suppose it's a bit of both really. The speakers and the attendees, maybe generalizing too much. The attendees are here to carry on some of the things. It is business as usual for a lot of organizations. Whilst I guess I tend to, my business, I focus on, we need to be hiring to be doing things. But for some, they've not really stopped hiring. They've just had to change how they've done it and evolve it. And you can see that mix of, we just had to find a new way of doing it. I mean, and for some businesses, it's been a really, really great opportunity, because they've just thrown away the rule book and just got on with it because they needed to. We're talking to Vicky, who I think is here as well. Vicky, who was from Panther. She's hiring delivery drivers and logistics people, and the number they needed is shot up. So old processes aren't applicable anymore. You just need to get on with it and hire people and get them out working.
I think that was a really big takeaway about the sign off on things. Just, how many approvals do you go through to get anything done, and how many hurdles would we used to go through? And just now, do we really need those hurdles and sign offs? It's get it done, as you say. Go out there. We need the people. Get them in. Get them onboarded and in quickly. It's been an interesting day with lots of different chats. Mark, I see he's just joining us. Oh no, he was there. He's back. We've had this little bit of a hokey cokey going on through the day, really, of in and out, and people popping in. And again, popping out.
That's the way of the world, isn't it? That if we can't be in a room, then there's always that natural thing. And I do think that got better, because I think, again, me and Jim Green, he's got like a stage, and in my head, I'm picturing this stage. And ordinarily, I wouldn't sort of just rock up into a stage and sort of start chatting to myself or drinking water or coughing or whatever. And then sure enough, you get to do that and go, and then you get a little text from Jim saying, mic's on, and that sort of stuff.
That awkward realization, isn't it, when you realize that either your microphone's on or it's not on when it should be on, and then
exactly.
Oh no,
you completely. You're sat there going,
20. Is this thing on? You're on mute.
So at least when you're in a venue, because you make an almighty sort of booming noise. Whereas when you're on this, and you might be sitting there sort of typing to yourself and thinking to yourself. But it's I mean, I've done it several times today, but there you go.
I think it's also the logistics of people sitting in their seats. You get the microphone, you sat there, and you nerves. Anyone that wasn't nervous today, and anything they're doing and presenting, I don't believe you at all. Everyone has some nerves, and you stood there, and the mic's going, and you're looking at the mic, and you're looking at the audience, and people are taking their seats, and you're sort of waiting. Whereas on here, you're just seeing everyone come down the side, and you presume that they're all sat there and all ready to go. So you hit the button and just hope everyone's sat down. Yeah. Good. Interesting.
Guys, I've got a question for you. So my question, obviously I can't relinquish full control of being the interviewer. What was your highlight from today?
Steve. Hi, Steve.
Went really well.
You're smooth, Jim.
It was actually. We had a little exchange. Yes, Steve's really interesting, because it was just interesting. Steve, fair play to you. It standing up worked, because you presented like you were in the room, and that came across a little bit. But what you had to say was really interesting as well. I'm as people know, I've got a very short span of attention, so you hold my attention. It's really good. I'm going to bring Sam in a bit as well, because we've all learned how to nap.
Oh yes, that was brilliant. That was really good.
Very good. Very good.
How long is a good nap? How long is a good nap, Steve? Can you remember?
Well, I from what I know, it's 20 minutes.
Maximum 20 minutes every week.
20 minutes, no more.
Something different.
No,
Don't get under the
I think. Now, I read somewhere, not that I'm into napping and falling asleep, sleep and efficiency, design thinking here, Steve. I was thinking ahead.
That's good.
I think there is a chemical that the body produces, and Sam might be able to tell us this. There's a chemical the body produces, and it only produces so much chemical. So you can nap, you can have naps through the day. Sam, tell me if I'm wrong, but there's a certain chemical that your body produces, and you only produce a certain amount of chemical in the day.
Well, I'm not quite sure what that would be, but we do know that cortisol is reduced by sleeping. During the day, you build up a neurotransmitter called adenosine, And actually that builds up, and that pressure at the end of the day, when it's at a certain level, you go, right, I need to sleep. But actually we know that that has two high peaks, one about 10 p.m. and one of a sort of middling peak at around 1 till 3 p.m. So it's not surprising that you start to feel a little bit dozy around 1 till 3 as that adenosine is building up. But if you really feel stressed and you just feel that you just need to check out of the day, then a nap is fantastic just to reset those cortisol levels.
Sam,
I'm definitely a 3 p.m. napper. I think 3 p.m. is my optimum
yeah, that's
time.
the one. That's the one. Sam, can I just ask? Because I watched your presentation earlier. I was like, oh, I need to ask. There was two things. What?
Yeah. Oh, why didn't you ask them then? Yeah, but go ahead.
Because they came after. They came after. So one of them was like, have they done loads of research in Spain? Because obviously siesta is so ingrained in their culture. So I'd be really interested to know about that. And the other one was, I remember reading somewhere a while ago, and I actually did try it, and it worked brilliantly because I'm a big coffee fan. I drink a lot of coffee.
I knew you were going to say that, Steve. I knew you were going to say that. The coffee nap question coming.
Yeah. So but it worked for me. It worked. I was like nectar coffee, and then went to sleep. Did 20 minutes, and then I woke up, and it was brilliant because that's when the coffee then kicks in.
There we go. Well, you've answered your question. The original source of that research was done in France, and it was done on lorry drivers, long distance lorry drivers. And they gave them the opportunity to do three things: have a nap and continue driving, have a cup of coffee and continue driving, or have the coffee and the nap and continue driving. And on the simulator, the driving test, it was the combination that was by far the most efficient in terms of alertness and perception. Brilliant. So there is science behind that. The only thing you need to know is it's got to be a short drink, because if you have a latte or something like that, it's going to take much longer to get through your system. And what you need is that really fast hit of caffeine that you get in an espresso shot. So it's not just any coffee, but you're absolutely right. 20 minutes and you get the double bubble of the nap and the caffeine, and then you're off and running.
Rocking. Yeah.
The problem is then sleeping at night.
I was going to say, so a short drink, so an espresso coffee and a whiskey does really well.
Wow, no.
Start driving.
Perhaps, Jim, over the weekend you can do a little study for us and let us know.
I will do a study on various whiskies and various coffees and that kind of thing. Yeah, I think it might work well.
How's that a study? It's the same as last weekend.
The brilliant fact about alcohol is that it certainly does help you sleep. You will notice that you nod off and you drift off very comfortably if you've had a few whiskeys. But the problem is it will give you a really disturbed night's sleep. It's one of the biggest reasons that people feel they have a light night's sleep, or they're getting up in the night, obviously to go to the loo, but they're feeling really uncomfortable and don't wake up rested. And in fact, wake up much earlier if you've had a high degree of alcohol the night before. Yeah. So it's a really bad idea, but actually a nap will solve your problem the following day.
So we can drink and then nap, and the two together work well. Yes, is that what we're saying?
Maybe that's not the perfect combination I'm advocating in the workplace, which is now the home. But
outside of the workplace.
Well, Salvador Dali used to have a theory that he only needed to sleep the amount of time that it took a pen to drop.
Okay, so the original source of that, Liz, has been quoted to Salvador Dali, actually. Yep. And he loved that moment between wakefulness and sleep, which is actually called a hypnagogic nap. And it's that borderline when you start to notice you're drifting off. And in that moment, you haven't quite gone through the gateway to sleep, but you are still in a state to release the subconscious. But you can quickly recall all those memories if you wake up very quickly. So if you hold a hard metal object in a hand as you're sitting in a chair and just drifting off, as soon as that hits the floor, then you wake up and you can capture all those thoughts. And that's what he did. And that's why we believe his surrealistic pictures were so bizarre, because they were an accurate representation of his muddled brain in that hypnagogic state.
Wow.
That technique has actually also been attributed to a number of other people, but that I believe is the original story.
Yeah, that's how I remember it, and I only know it because that's usually when I start snoring, my husband gives me the elbow to wake up.
There we go. It's really interesting to know, when we talk about napping, everybody has a story, everybody has a connection to it, everyone feels comfortable around it, and then when you just wrap around the work conversation, they go,
yeah. Absolutely.
Nope, don't do that here.
Yeah.
But as Cara was saying, we all want to do those things like going to the gym, you know, having those walks at lunchtime or whatever it is, but it doesn't work for everybody. You know, a nap is the best thing for some people.
Yeah,
it could be a perk.
I'll share a quick story. There's a friend of mine here in Stockholm, and there's partners, there's 3 of them as partners, and they have it's like an AR design agency, and obviously a lot of programming, a lot of quite unique people in terms of how they work. And so she but she was very open to adapting the workplace so that actually some of them come in super early and then they have to sleep at 2 o'clock because it's the way their brains work. If they don't sleep, it's done. I mean, it's not how they work. So it's super adaptive, and yeah, there's definitely people who benefit from these little naps during the day.
And actually, I think we're starting to wake up to the fact that we all have slightly different ways of using our sleep. You know, there are a lot of institutions educationally that are looking at teenagers who are now sleeping later in the morning and starting at 10 o'clock and finishing at 6 o'clock, and that's a great day for them. And so actually, the more we think about using sleep in the round, I think the more productive and the happier we're all going to be.
Yeah, Mark, Natasha was just saying she's been sleeping most of the day. Actually, she's taking lots of naps through the talks and that kind of thing. So yeah.
Jim, do you know what? I was actually just sort of in the background, just listening on this conversation, and then suddenly I'm up on screen, and I thought, oh no. but then Sam, I'm delighted.
Again, that's okay, aren't we?
Yeah, no, I'm okay. I've got my clothes back on. That's right. But Sam, absolutely delighted to be coming in and listening to that story, and obviously talking about napping, because yeah, that is something I might be able to contribute to, actually, because I was worried about what I could, because I spent most of the day speaking and obviously just dealing with stuff on the back end, and I haven't really had a look as much as I'd like on the front end. But napping, I think I'm a big fan. Gets to about, honestly, and hand on heart, this confession time, I get to about 2:30, and I go, everything's taking twice as long as it should right now. And then 20 minutes, and then literally shower, coffee, back in the game. Till about 7:30. So I'm a big advocate.
So Mark, what you need to do is convince Martin's shouty old man that you talked about earlier.
Oh, yeah, we can't do that because we're live, otherwise it would give you, I've got a sales opportunity for you, to be really blunt. I'll point you in the direction of the shouty man and see what he says.
Personal proof.
Okay.
Well done, Mark. Spread the message, spread the love.
Always.
Dom has joined us now. Dom, I'm going to say, sorry, I didn't see you because I was busy.
Technical issues.
Oh, no, that's okay. I didn't see you at 10 this morning. How was it for you? Because you were, so me and Jim were obviously in our magic world of main stage, because we're kind of important around here. You were over at stage 3, and that's because you work for a job board. How was it?
Yeah, good. So some interaction. I think the biggest thing was people not actually asking questions necessarily, but downloading assets and looking at some of those bits and pieces, which I think will, in the days to come, have some effect and prompt some conversations. And actually, there were current clients, for example, that were downloading some bits and pieces. But I don't see that as a bad thing, because it's proving that we're turning their money into hopefully some kind of thought leadership, some kind of useful information for them, and for the other guys, seeing other people that are attendees interacting with that, and then keeping CW Jobs front of mind as to what we can potentially deliver. Because it's a strength and a weakness. CW Jobs is a weird name out of Computer Weekly, and a lot of people don't know it, particularly on the direct side. On the Retcon community, definitely. On the direct side, not so much. So it's just getting that front of mind, understanding that there is a tech board out there that has a long-standing history. So it will do nothing to erode that at all.
What about events? So yeah, me and Jim are do lots of navel gazing because we can at the moment. I'm disappointed, Dom, you've not your glasses on. We did a call earlier on the week with Dom. So it's me, Jim, and Dom on a call. I mean, not being funny, it's just like variations of a theme. The same glasses as
art book.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah,
the three. It's almost like a sort of. We decided it was a poor man's 2 Ronnies, because there were 3 Ronnies, and then we realised you had to be a certain age to know who Ronnie Corbett was.
Yeah.
And then it all got a bit
just
wrong.
Digging a whole world of pain, really, wasn't it?
But we're down with the kids, really, and it's all good.
I think the discussion then went on to D&I, didn't it? And how cringeworthy it is to kind of go, don't worry, everybody. It's okay. We've got 3 middle-aged men to talk about D&I for you, and everything's safe.
But luckily,
so,
we did a little TikTok video, so we're fine now, aren't we? It'll be fine, and it's out there. So the navel gazing bit that me and Jim do is around about events. So we're awkward about events. You know, I do some other events in the room, and obviously IHR do stuff in the room. The necessity is that we're sort of sat on a screen now. How do you feel about that as somebody who's had to present today? Do you feel good about it, not bad about it? I said, you know, Steve, I took the piss out of you a little bit because you stood up. Nobody else stood up to do that. I got it, but he said it changed your demeanor a little bit. You sort of rocked up like you were on a stage.
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe open to both of you, all of you, to say how was it for you? Not just how was it for you, because obviously we love IHR, but how was it for you? Is this the future, and can we stick with this, or are we trying to do something awkward that still doesn't quite fit? That's a long question.
Well, I mean, it wasn't as glamorous because my laptop was sat on a swivel chair, which the swivel chair was on top of the board table. So yeah, behind the scenes, it was looking a bit dodgy. I think for me, just because, like, you know, I'm quite high energy when I do my presentations, and I think there was definitely moments. Say you do a 20-minute, I would say there's probably at some point in the round about the 12 to 16-minute, that kind of 2/3 in, where there is definitely internalizing. You're kind of going, you know, where's this going? Is it all right? Is it okay? Am I just whittling on? You know, you think you kind of your journey and your content's engaging, and obviously then you move towards your crescendo at the end. So
is that because you can't see people, Steve?
It is.
Yeah,
it's really hard. And so yeah, that's the number one. I mean, it's super obvious, but it's definitely one that is, I think I don't think you can replicate it. I think it's incredibly difficult.
I think when you see people talking on LinkedIn, the reason I like watching people on LinkedIn is you can put a little thumbs up and little hearts, and you see some interactions coming through. And that would be great to have on a Zoom. It would be great to have that ability to have that kind of thing, because that audience engagement, you know, you are looking at a screen, you know, you're not looking at anyone else, but when you're looking in the room, you're looking at other people. You know, if you could get that little bit of an engagement, might be some way there. But yeah.
You know, the real life thing when the doorbell rings and you're only growing up in the house, so carry on, just pretend I've gone away.
He normally drops me in that on a thing in the middle of a talk with someone. And Jim, what do you want to ask somebody? And literally, like, doesn't he, Elizabeth? We're in the middle of a show or something, and he'll just ask that question and completely drop us in it. So yeah, coming back to that sort of live interaction, that thought. Dom, how was yours? Were you sat down? And of course, we unfortunately weren't able to. We'll get the replay, but we weren't able to watch.
Well, we recorded it because Steve Ward a couple of weeks ago thought his diary was going to be jammed, so we had to record it. And
of course, Steve Ward's jammed until the end of the year. I mean, it's just
2021.
Yeah.
Lockdown or otherwise. No, he's a very, very busy man and very accomplished. And actually, well, the one we did with you, Natasha, was really, it was very much more of a chat, but there was something different about recording it. Although we recorded ours, it was very much live, but because we recorded it, I think it lost something of the impact.
Strange, isn't it?
Wow.
Because I think we were having a conversation, and even though you were probably talking about, so we ran a actually Dom's topic was around sort of tech talent landscape. They do a massive annual survey, and they launched it just at the time when lockdown happened. So actually it was a really interesting perspective of actually what tech talent is thinking right now. So that was the interview that we ran probably a couple of months ago now. But there was also the results that you were sharing today. So it's probably exactly the same stuff, but as soon as you know that you are only speaking to the laptop rather than the people behind the laptop, it's a really different dimension. And I think you can sometimes tell that
definitely
when you view the presentations as well, because it's just a different tone of voice, it's a different way of interacting.
I think that you're imagining this is going to be, you know, cast and aspic forever. So you're watching every single word, and it doesn't have that spontaneity because you're thinking, oh, well, how could that be translated? So you do definitely lose something. I think I would definitely change that next time. Although we would have gone with that. It was just kind of a timing issue, but that's definitely a takeaway for me on the whole thing. But I absolutely agree with Steve that, you know, that wall of not being able to see, is this, you know, are people falling asleep or are they?
Depends if they listen
like
to Sam beforehand, really. Well, you know,
very true, and that would be a positive. That would be a positive.
Yeah. We tried for a little bit of interactivity on the annotation, and didn't seem to get that working. So that was a shame. We wanted people just to be able to make their marks physically.
It worked for some, but not for others, which was a bit strange. But yeah, the annotations are working. But again, and it was nice that you could try and get them to do something. Polls are good as well from that perspective.
Polls, yeah.
These people actually have to press a button and they can see a countdown and stuff happening. So that's cool.
I think just something else to share that I've been involved with this year more so is, it may not work on big groups. I mean, I've seen it work on, I mean, a good 30, 40 people, I'd say, definitely in the room.
Yeah.
Where I mean, the facilitation element is really intense. So it probably requires up to 3 facilitators, 1 person kind of leading, and then 2 support facilitators.
Yeah.
But we've worked with doing kind of design sprint type format where we're in kind of Muriel or Miro and then Zoom, and then actually getting them engaged as part of on the Miro board, and then actually co-creating some stuff together. The big challenges with that, of course, if you're thinking out from a participant point of view, is out of probably 30 people, there's probably a good 25%, maybe more, that haven't even touched a Miro board or a Muriel.
Yeah.
So I think some of the things that worked really well for us is we create like a sandbox mural, and then we get them to go in and just play in a sandbox before the day, so then you're not getting labored by, you know, these people struggling to engage. So I think there's elements like where you can definitely mix and match Zoom and Mural really effectively and get that engagement and create it. So
yeah, definitely.
I must say, I don't necessarily think this is a truly new thing. It's a new thing to us because, of course, you've got, you know, lots of people who are who've been presenting, you know, on TV, and they don't have their millions of people in front of them, but obviously they're through a camera. But what they have done is they've replicated that with a studio audience. So in theory, you know, if you had, you know, 4 or 5 people, or 6 people, no, 5 people, including you, because that's all we're allowed at the moment, to be sort of sitting, if you had a few people sitting in front of you and you did that presentation, you would get that realism, wouldn't you? You know, and yet that's going out to a much wider audience. And I just wonder if you get a few of your colleagues together and if you were doing that, whether that would actually replicate it a little bit, because it's a pretty lonely sort of place, just speaking into a laptop. And also when you've got as many chances to try again as you can, you lose a little bit of that edginess, which I think is quite important in a presentation as well. So maybe a couple of things that we can look at as well.
Yeah, there was, I think it was Bloomberg, was it, that run some seminars over in America, and they had an audience, but it was also recorded and things like that. So there was that element of being part of the audience and, you know, almost in the room with them. And that could be, as you say, pretty limited with a rule of 6, Mark, but you know, hopefully one day we could have even 7 or 8 people in a room, and but something like that could work.
I did hear something yesterday that the production team behind QI, the quiz show, are really trialing to have exactly this, to have lots of people actually as the, you know, lots of people in the audience, and to do it this way, so that there's some response, and that, you know, the stand-up isn't just dying, that they've got that audience with them, and they're saying it actually could be better than a studio audience, because people are relaxed in their own homes, and that spontaneity of just connecting could be actually a really new way of picking up responses and
Aren't Britain's Got Talent doing that at the moment as well? Did I hear that right? Yeah, I think they're doing it as well. So they have iPads in the actual audience where the performers are actually performing to iPads instead.
Yeah.
I think what a prime opportunity, really, everyone, to think that we've got 17 odd attendees still in the background there to ask them. There's questions here. You know?
Vicky's gone to look for a room. So Vicky was on on the panel on the main stage earlier. So just going to wheel her in. But if she's not found a room, then she's not going to join. So,
but other people can join. Other people can ask questions.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. And one thing I can also recommend, Priya Parker, actually, she's wonderful. You can find her. She also has a podcast called Together Apart, and she has some incredible ideas around facilitation and really breaking it down as to why are we meeting, what are we hoping to get out of this, rather than thinking about the logistics of can we do this or that, to say, okay, how do we get some fun questions? So For example, how do we do dating in a COVID world when we can't meet up? And doing, you know, maybe some of us used to do in the 80s where we would have phone calls and you'd do little dog darias. And it's a fun piece to say, hey, let's not think of, you know, here, how do we translate the live version into here what this stage set is, but really design for that stage set. And so I can definitely recommend some of her things to look at.
She's
really
great.
come back to why are we getting together? Yeah.
She's great.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't scripted, don't you? Because the other thing, me and Jim had a long talk last night about structure and being funny, and we decided we couldn't do funny because we also didn't know it was going to turn up. So on that basis, it's gone a little bit, that's okay. What we've also noticed in the evenings that we think we're funnier, even though
is that after a few beers, Martin?
Yeah, a little bit. There's something about that. We did, the latest when we finished at 10:30, which Elizabeth joins us from Germany. So she's not, but she's not actually the worst. I want to name names. Hi, Claire Bush, if you're out there.
It's your perception, Martin. That's what it is. You've got no sense of what's going on because you're too tired.
Nicely done. Well played.
Everything eventually.
You could have a nap.
Yes, the audience do actually.
Oh, ouch. I was going to have a nap. You've actually all destroyed my other plan, Steve, because I'm jealous that you live in Sweden. I went for actually, I'll say it out loud. I tried to work in Sweden a couple of years ago, got a job, and another story about the interview and how I managed to screw it up completely. But I was going to come and volunteer. Every time you do a talk, I'll just come and be your audience, but it will mean you having to pay for me to fly out there every time.
No worries. It means I get the human engagement. It's worth it. Ryanair's about 20 quid one way at the moment.
For a whole plane.
Yeah.
One of the grown-up themes that came out, I guess, there was definitely something around. Well, we've covered it in sort of various guises. So there were companies that were saying we're doing really well and we're hiring lots of people, but we can no longer attract people from where we used to go and get them from because they don't want to join us. It's not because they don't want to join us because they're wonderful, but they don't want to leave their company. But then we've got other organisations who are going hell for leather. We're hiring, but are being saturated by more applicants than they know what to do with. And there's definitely something about that, but I don't actually think we've really got to the bottom of what's the answer, because it felt like everybody said, well, we sort of send emails, we do this and we do that and we do some other bits and things, but it never really got to, and this is what we're actually doing. We talked about youth unemployment as well, and that was interesting. I said there's some numbers out today in the UK around youth unemployment and this sort of the beginning of problems coming along. So that's actually just magnifies the issue. Collectively, I'm going to ask all of you, I think I talked about it being optimistic or not. Are we all optimistic about next year? I mean, if you're in the events business, your name's Mark, and you normally hire a huge, great venue, then you've got to be optimistic because that's sort of what you do. But what about the rest of us? Is it going to be all right? Life?
Well, I think it's more about being
that killed everybody.
As I live in Sweden.
Yeah, how is that?
I'm going to go optimistic because it can work. It's a really hard one. I mean, genuinely, since March, I've shared way less on social media to friends, and when we talk to our friends on Zoom and stuff, we're really kind of holding it back because particularly when it was through that really difficult challenge kind of lockdown period, you could see them, they were looking a bit threadbare, and it's like, oh blimey, we're actually all right here. So it's been a weird one. It's been a really weird one. We've kind of always kind of got on with it. I think for us, we didn't have had that forced lockdown, but actually everyone volunteered lockdown. And I think that's one of the big observations here in Sweden. My affinity to Sweden has grown loads this year, just because of how people listen to their government here and kind of are very supportive. I think there's just less faff here. It's much simpler. And also just people are kind of judging some of the numbers, but I won't go into them. But there's always, I try to remind people that in the whole of Sweden, there's 10.5 million people. There's more people in the whole of London. So compared to then Sweden is 4 times the size of the whole of the UK. Social distancing comes super easy to Swedes. So
clear off to your summer house.
Totally different landscape. Yeah. So, I mean, you can't apply what will happen here. Certainly, I wouldn't probably have applied it probably to London either.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a very, here it's such an interesting culture. It's very, they do things very purposefully. You can see everything's very considered, like everything's has a purpose and a reason. And the way they work is really different. It's very compartmentalized. 3 o'clock, 3:30 on a Friday, most offices are empty when they had people in them. So
do you think it was, do you think that, did they just get it? Was it an aha moment?
Yeah, because the Swedes are very, the Swedes of Swedes.
See what you did there, Jim.
Yeah.
It is that. And, they're very kind of, if it's for the good of the country, then they get behind it. And everybody knew. And also they're very cautious naturally. I think they're quite cautious anyway, naturally. So I think a lot of them just went work from home. The internet here is amazing. 4G is amazing. Everything bloody works. I mean, the infrastructure here is stunning. I get 100 meg in our summer house, which is in the middle of a forest in the arse end of nowhere. So it's kind of the infrastructure is super.
I think we just have to mute Steve. He's talking about 100 megs there. Sorry, everyone is suffering. Sorry, mate. You had to do it. Your internet's breaking up, Steve.
That little 2 up, 2 down the back of Doncaster. He's changed.
Yeah, it's mad. It's mad plan.
Your internet might go in a second, Steve. You might just magically disappear on
it. Yeah, not mute him accidentally. I'm just going to say something back to kind of my part of the world, is to respond to your question there, Martin. I think this next year is going to be brilliant from an individual point of view, because people know now how they can structure their lives to get the most out of what they need, given a working day of 8 till 6 at home. And I think there will be much more focus on helping individuals enjoy their time and get the most out of it, and that in a way that there hasn't ever been before. It's been much more about being in the location, and you conform to what that location expected you to do. When you're in your home, you're your own master. And I think there'll be a lot more opening up of how people spend their time productively and enjoyably in their homes, and do even better work. So I think it could be great for all of us.
Do you think, me being the cynic that I am, that's also, though, only for the privileged who actually do have work, that potentially we've got a little ticking time?
Okay, yeah, of course there are people who are caring and who have other responsibilities, without question. But it's not just about taking physical absence from your desk and going somewhere else. It's about the need to rest. It's about the need to recover. We are all under such psychological stress at the moment. No certainty, no autonomy, no fairness. All those wonderful David Rock measures from 30 years ago, his SCARF model. Life is really tough for all of us, and we know the only way we can get through that is to be compassionate, to give ourselves the opportunity just to decompress at regular points somehow throughout the day, whether that's just going and peeling potatoes for the evening meal mindfully at 1 o'clock at lunch, fine, it doesn't matter. But I think there will be a lot more of that opening up and allowing people to rest and recover.
I think just to sort of add into that, I think there's been a huge amount of learnings that have gone on, more learnings than you'd ever have before. I think lots of people, Sam, as you were saying, I think a lot of people have learned a lot about themselves, and that's great. And there've been, I went up to the office last week, back into London, because hand on heart, as much as I'm as disciplined as I could possibly be, and I like to think that I'm a disciplined person, there are distractions, a lot of distractions. And actually there's too much of this sort of being able to do whatever you want, because come on, you can do anything you want, whenever you want, you can just do it right now. And that's not necessarily a great disciplined way to work. And I think that and for some people it does work, but I think that there's a lot of people where, hand on heart, even though they probably won't admit it, but it doesn't. And actually getting people together, I think, is not necessarily all the time, but I think that is important. But the point about what's going to be happening next year, Martin, I think you were sort of insinuating that, look, there is going to be a lot of displacement. There's a lot of people who are going to be out of work. That is absolutely going to be the case. There will be changes, there'll be movement. But do you know what? One of the best things that's out there for recruiters is that when there is displacement, because of course they're the very people who are going to put it back together again. And we don't know necessarily how long that's going to take, and it's going to happen over a phased period of time. But recruiters are at, and I obviously no one knows exactly when that's going to be, so I don't know whether that's going to be sort of 2021 entirely, but they're going to have a vast amount of work to do, and they won't necessarily be doing exactly the same work that they were doing before, because a lot of the recruiters themselves are actually moving into completely different spheres and jobs. And I think where you have that amount of change in the marketplace, you know, the optimism in me says that that gives opportunity. And there's that, you know, this change has given, let's face it, you know, think of all the video interview companies that have been banging the drum for such a long time, and then suddenly we're all in this, and they've been going, I told you so, you know, this is, but we've all needed to, and you know, and that just, along with all the other product management systems, all these other ones, we've learned all these, we've needed it, and now we're going to sort of go into it. So I think there's an awful lot of positivity that you can take out of it. It isn't going to be easy for everyone by any means, but I think 2021, I am fairly optimistic about sort of that side of things. And, you know, I just think it is what you make of it.
I think, Dom, yeah, that leads me into question. Mark, I think you're right. I think there's, you know, as Albert Einstein said, in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. And I know people are going through very difficult situations, and we've got to think about all those difficult situations that people have, and people have lost their lives, which is horrendous. Dom, you know, we talk about the future of work, we talk about the future of jobs and future of job boards. What about the future of job titles? Steve alluded to earlier on as design thinking, you know, and that kind of thing. We're seeing more job titles. Are you seeing that now with, you know, a trend to the if you take the candidate journey from A to Z, you know, there's different parts in that journey now, and new things are happening. Are you seeing new job titles coming in?
Yeah, there's I definitely urge everyone to check this out. It was on HBR a couple of weeks ago, and there was a lady in America, Jean something. Yeah, she shared a piece around 21 new job titles in HR alone. And there was some really wild and wonderful ones in there, you know, like head of bias, you know, all sorts of stuff in there, like really interesting. And it really genuinely, in the HR community generally, it definitely made an impression, because HR as a function is just, if you look at it as a siloed function, is probably going through one of the biggest transformations it's ever gone through. It's such a historical, traditional function. But then the profession and those sitting within it as well. So it's like, what kind of, in the future in HR, are we going to have people analytics? Are we going to have you know, diversity inclusion? Are we going to have all of these kind of things sitting in? But yeah, there's definitely more coming. Head of employee experience, I've been watching it on LinkedIn for 2 years. I just do a quick kind of Boolean search on it. And there's just more and more people now with these types of roles, and companies are definitely getting behind it and putting budget into these types of I call it like white glove type, purely focused on people experience type roles, and everything around that.
Which is also an interesting change, because before it was really all about the candidate experience. And I remember, you know, me as a talent manager, where I used to have to fight, like, we have this internal pipeline, you know, and how are we looking to, you know, maybe we have something on the posters, but if it doesn't reflect the actual experience of folks at work, we're also creating a huge disconnect and an opportunity for Glassdoor. So it's really wonderful that piece around, you know, how are we using and leveraging design thinking? How are we understanding that not everything has to be scalable, and really understanding how are we using listening within organizations and across those boundaries in much better ways, so that we really do understand what our talent pipeline is, what it needs, and that we as HR are not just expecting, you know, project that we push it out, but really looking at how are we co-creating so that the experience at work is really also a good one.
And I resonate what you just said there, Elizabeth. It's so the likes of we're an advisory partner to Qualtrics, and this year they've seen, like, you know, these are the companies that are doing very well out of COVID at the moment. So the Glints and Culture Amps and the Qualtrics, because organizations have realized that, oh, hang on a minute, we need to implement a really robust listening strategy, not just for this annual engagement. We need to have multiple touch points. We need to open up the communication channel to ensure now people are out of sight, they're not out of mind. So yeah, they're now capturing a plethora of data and insights now. And the important bit now is, what do you do with that, and how do you go about doing it? I think that's really important as well.
I think Steve, you were talking about the plethora of HR titles that's going to come through, but you just have to kind of just imagine tech being becoming part of other departments, and the multitude of what that can bring, and kind of adding data before any job title, or data analyst of any job title, and there's probably 24 right there just in any standard company. And I do remember us talking about 10 years ago, talking about the children born now, we don't even know the job titles they'll have, and that's still very, very much true. But if you start to think about AI, Internet of Things, I don't think we've even scratched the surface of what Internet of Things is going to bring. It's very, very exciting. Going back to the point of what I think is going to happen next year, I'm very, very concerned on the youth unemployment side and the mental stress that's going to bring to people that are just coming into the market. Probably one of the toughest markets of 40 years. And they're going to have a really, really difficult time. And then their confidence shot of where to go next. And I think we really, really somehow need to help those people out. And it will be okay if you kind of cling to your job for the time being. And then I think we'll come out quite steeply, because people that have been clinging on, that then have other opportunities to moving around, which will cause those gaps to open up and need to be refilled by the recruitment side, as you were alluding to, Mark, and creating that opportunity. So I think we'll see real pain, and then exploding into very different job titles, and a lot of the investment which has been held back. So it's just a matter of holding out as long as we can, and then hoping that these antigen testing and all of that comes through. But I think there are far-reaching consequences and real positives from what's happened, from exactly what you were saying, Sam, to look at it positively, and the fact that, do we really need to be in an office? And I'm sure that's been brought up many times today, but that would be fascinating to see how that plays out, and then consequently what that does to our city centres. Are all of these office buildings going to be luxury flats in the middle of London? But do you want to live in the middle of London if you can't commute to work because your bedroom is your office? So it's fascinating as to what's going to happen over the next, not just next year, but the next 5 years. But ultimately a positive thing, because going back to Mark's point, it has fast-tracked so many things that people, can I let people work from home? Do I trust them? Can I video interview? Well, guess what? You've got to. They're gun to your head. Funnily enough, you managed to get through it.
And can you let them have a nap as well?
Resounding yes, I think.
If I may, I've actually got the HBR post up. I'll just share with you a couple of the titles, if I may, just to see how this lands. You've got chatbot and human facilitator, work from home facilitator, a human bias officer, workplace environment architect, definitely needed, human network analyst. I mean, just super interesting. Human bias officer, I think that's quite an interesting one.
Search for that. I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, how would anyone actually find that or look for that as well? You just go, what is this?
Yeah.
Oh, we see. I've got a bit of software in my bag, which will.
Oh, have you?
Actually, we've got a question there, haven't we? We've got a question saying.
So we don't know who it's from, but I mean, has your mum dialed in or not, Jim?
I think she has. Yeah, it could well be. Hi, Mum.
I know she's watching. Yeah. She's good.
Yeah, we're live on YouTube. My mum's always watching me on YouTube. Maybe not this channel, but there's other channels. So how are companies adapting to their recruitment software stack? I mean, we had lots of chats about that today. People have been talking about various things and the recruitment stack and the recruitment journey. Steve, I'm going to come to you, because if you look at that design thinking, you talked about that already, and where we are with everything. Can I hesitant to use another, not the RCIRCLE word, but another R word, the Resumo word. I didn't say that. But within the technology here, what are you seeing in that design? How are people adapting? Are people adapting? Are people starting to adapt? Because there was a point from a vendor point, people were very quiet at the very start. There's a lot more uptake now, but what are your thoughts?
From a design point of view, I mean, I think if I just apply this directly into more kind of resourcing and HR, they're still really early on in adopting more of a kind of design mindset when starting to think about software, or technology or their stack. So there's still kind of that fear of missing out. There's still that kind of, the technology is going to, solve our problems. I think from what I've seen, and again, this is experience from Qualtrics as an example, just the client brief and the RFP and RFI process. If you just think about how traditional has that been? I mean, it's been the same for years. I mean, it hasn't really, in my mind and what I've seen, it hasn't really changed too much. I just think on an organizational side point of view, I think they need to do more work up front on assessing and researching people and really understanding. So let's just take an ATS as an example on a very simplistic level, is really undertaking what are the needs and wants and desires of HR managers or resourcing or hiring managers, and really starting to understand what is it from each of these different user groups that engage with that technology, and then start to think about how do you build out your RFP, and then actually present a journey to the potential vendors, and then say, here's the moments that matter for us. This is where we need to show up as a business. How do you then deliver and support that? How can your system deliver that? And I think that's something for me, which I think just not enough done on that side. I think it's definitely some more work. We need to think the balance. We always talk about this balance of technology and humans. I think certainly up front, the work, just more research and more empathy and understanding, I think is really, really important.
Jack, earlier on today, we were chatting about communication tools, and he was talking about the youth side of things. He mentioned TikToking on there, and we've mentioned it a few times, and I think people were sort of embracing the TikTok side, and then they sort of veered away because of all the worry and the safety issues around it. But he was talking about, was it Martin, he was saying about on the training side, they were using TikTok as training videos and those kind of things. It's quite interesting to understand.
It's easy to create, just get on with it, and you can do masses of stuff. I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it, about embracing. I'm hoping that this current situation allows us all to embrace bits of technology we wouldn't have used, even corporates. Although ironically, we're talking to the guys from Google today. Obviously, they're coming in through Zoom, and they really struggle with that because they're not allowed to use Zoom because they work for Google. So there's a sort of slight parochial sort of not invented in our back garden type thing. But I think for most of us, I think most organizations can adapt and perhaps use things we perhaps wouldn't have used before, maybe because we're forced into thinking, how am I going to get this bit of information from here to there? In the olden days, I would have walked across the office and told them, and I can tell them, I can send them a message, but it's something a bit more than that. So I think there's certainly hopefully an adoption of new stuff.
I think Jim and Martin also, there's been, if you look around, we've all seen, I mean, pretty much everyone is, up on their roof or up on their ladders or building something or doing something. Like everyone is just using a bit of time to basically sort their, own backyard out, so to speak, and their own houses. And they're having they're basically investing in this. And this is quite similar in a lot of organizations of what we're hearing as well, because a lot of organizations, I think this is the nature of the question that we've been asked about, how is this tech stack looking? What are people doing with that? And actually there has been, whilst there was this pause, because it's not to say that everyone suddenly wasn't busy, because everyone was busy doing a lot of other things that suddenly they didn't expect to have at this particular time. Sure, recruitment fell off a cliff. However, there was that period of time where literally nothing went on at all. It was just silence. And I think at that particular point, that's when everyone started to look at those jobs that they had on the list that they hadn't been looking at. And quite a lot of those are, that problem that we've been sort of talking about with our ATS or with our video function, or we can't do this, or whatever. People started to look at this and they started to join it all up. And that's been really, really good. And certainly a lot of those conversations, when we speak to a lot of our vendors, they're having quite a lot of those conversations. Now, it's a completely different question whether the budgets are there or not, because obviously there's a lot of this process that's going through. And I don't know, Dom, whether, you might be able to add to this at all, but, people are looking and they're seeing what else they could be using, how they can make it better for when there is that kind of need and that demand that comes out there. There's been a lot of that, but whether they're following through, I know that they definitely have been in the ATS space. I would say that that's probably the busiest place for a lot of our vendors that seem to be doing the best. But everyone's looking at what their tech stack is, and they're making improvements.
Yeah, I think it's where the AI comes in, and who knows what incredible tech can be applied to it, because I'm certainly not the man, or certainly don't have the imagination to solve those situations. But it is the $1 million question, because once you start to take once you can get away from just put it out there to everybody to I pay a certain amount of money and I get 3 candidates in front of me that I decide who I'm going to interview, to shorten that, and they have character fit with, I don't know, psychometric testing like Good & Co or something like that, that makes it very, very attractive to direct employees, certainly.
I think people are, and I think you're right. I think to your point, I think people are using and looking at that tech now. I also think it's also there are certainly some comments from organisations being truly global, saying actually we used to want a plumber in, a bad example, we used to want a software developer in Reading. We don't care where they are anymore. We're going to pay them. That sets up another debate about payroll, and are you paying the Reading salary, or are you paying the Milan salary, or are you paying the wherever salary? Which one are you going to go for? And I suspect,
that's really interesting, Martin, because I kind of played this through very, very quickly. There was a company talking about paying regional salaries, but very quickly, if you're working from home, it doesn't matter what region you're in. Yeah. So suddenly, everybody's salary takes a jump because the top talent is going to get paid the most, and it doesn't matter if they're in Aberdeen or Islington. They're going to be paid the same amount. The guy in Aberdeen might be better than the guy in Islington, but he wants the amount that the guy in Islington's got, because there's no difference between the two. There's no more local or anything.
It's a big debate. I mean, so there's also then taxation and payroll and all sorts of other things, because we've always been traditionally tied. You work in the UK. Well, I might be working in the UK. I could be definitely working. I'm working US hours for a US company because it really suits me, and anybody out there that really suits me. I'm very nocturnal. It's that sort of, how do we pay you? What do we do? And there's people putting almost the complicated bits in there. I'm hoping things like that sort themselves out. I'm conscious of the time. We definitely said we'd only do an hour. So it's coming up to, if I could make my thing, I've got 97. I reckon we've got 3 minutes. 3 minutes of fun. No pressure, Jim.
It's all been fun, Martin.
Yeah. Okay. We talked. Everyone has talked about what the stuff we're doing at the moment, the new technology, the design thinking, where to put your adverts, how to have a nap in the middle of that, and all the good things that we're seeing coming through. 2021, what one thing do each of you don't want to see returning? What don't want to see in 2021? Natasha.
Let's start with that. I think let's get rid of COVID, and I think that will open up a lot of sort of further areas. We can go back to doing hybrid events. We can do face-to-face events and the virtual ones. And I think that just gives more opportunity. As much as tech is great, and as much as it gives that, it's what we need right now. It doesn't replace that face-to-face person and in meeting stuff that we've got going on. And even the fact you can't meet more than 6 people, and you're not constantly in the office. So I'd like to see the back of COVID, please, because I'm sure everyone else will. So no one can steal my answer now.
If we could do that thumbs up, I'm sure everyone would have
exactly.
Win.
I'll jump in, and just in case anyone, whilst you're sort of thinking this through as I was, Tash, I'm glad that you took the hit on the first one there to give us a little bit more time. I'd like to see the back of backward thinking, because we don't want to go back, and hopefully we're all in the clear, as Tash has sort of said. But then we all go back to what we did before, and we haven't really learned what we had here. Just because it's changed, it doesn't necessarily mean if we don't use this to actually get better and do this, then that's a big wasted opportunity. And I know that that we're creatures of habit. Maybe we do that, but hopefully I don't want to see backward thinking.
Yep.
I'm going to build on that, Mark, and say I don't want to see burnout. I think there'll be a lot more opportunity for people to be absolutely frazzled because they're trying, as you said, to do everything in their home environment. So I just want to see that resolved in however suits you. It might be a nap.
I've noticed a theme with you, Sam. I'm not saying that you're not interested, but there is definitely a theme.
Okay, I'm on brand. Excellent.
I need to introduce you to somebody called, you'll be watching, won't you, Adam? You need to meet Adam Gordon. He's the same. He just has everything as relates to that.
I was trying to take a big
Nicely done, Jim. Props.
Steve, Dom, what do you want to see in 2021?
Mine is I don't want to see the old levels of mistrust. I think we've broken through new levels of trust of our teams. Right. Let's continue that. Yep. And it's such a breakthrough for me, and I think it's invigorating for so many stuff. Don't employ people you mistrust.
Yeah. Right.
End of story. You're giving them the future of your business is at stake. Yeah. And yet you have to see every single minute of the day of exactly what they are doing, trust them, and be more about outputs rather than every single input that they've done. So that for me is the whole trust issue, and long may it continue.
Yep.
I would go with So it probably builds on a couple of comments already, but I don't want to go back to default. We've been living, work has been in a default mode in my mind for decades. Engagement scores continue to be really bad and poor. 13%, I think it was, on the Gallup reports of engaged or, was engaged workforce. So I think I mentioned it in my presentation. I think right now, everything's up in the air. We've all got off the hamster wheel. Mm-hmm. And while it's up in the air, let's grab some of those things or challenges that we had, and let's not just let it land back down into a default. Let's grab it and then redesign it into a way that really benefits people and organizations equally, not just one way. Business.
Yeah. Marvelous.
Got the word design in there, didn't he?
He did. I know he's the same. Beyond brand.
We should play bingo next time.
Cards, isn't it? It's how many times will you say brand? Anyway, with that, I make it 5 o'clock, which I said I would promise we would disappear at 5. Mark and Natasha, thank you so much for running a day like you've run. Thank you for getting everybody organised and online and doing their thing. I'm sure your partners and your attendees and everything will give you lots of great feedback about it. It was great. Given that it was online, given it wasn't in the room, and I can't help thinking we've all got that slight nostalgic, where would we be right now? Well, right now we'd be sat at the back end of somewhere. We actually might be a bit early, but we'd be in some at least talking about where the bar was and heading that way and having a lovely time for it. So, but I do want to thank you guys for doing that. And we're going to leave you. So this has been RCIRCLE doing their live thing. You can obviously follow us on YouTube/C/RCIRCLE. Just Google RCIRCLE, or just Google Jim. You'll find Jim. He's been on Game of Thrones, And with that, we will close up. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed,
Martin.
Thank
you for running the main stage and speaking and everything else throughout the day. So yeah, thank you.
I kept that bit on. I've kept that live. I was going to stop doing that, but now you said.